This video is brought to you by Popcorn. No brand in particular, just popcorn. Monster Bash. Released on April 9th, 1993. Monster Bash developed and published by Apogee Software. I don't talk with many people about old games because I don't have many friends, so I don't know if people consider this a classic or not. It's old though, so if you ever see it used, someone's going to slap vintage all over their eBay listing and justify an extra $100. Even if it's just a 3.5-inch floppy with big cracks and soda stains all over it. I'm playing the GOG version because I'm poor and can't afford nice things like the original copies of a 23-year-old game. On Wikipedia, its development is accredited to Frank Maddin. It must have been John Maddin's less athletic brother or something. His first game was Crystal Caves in 1991, an absolute classic considered by many as far as I know. And eventually in 1997, he worked on Shadow Warrior, a rather well-known build engine title which, while a really solid game, was as good as Duke Nukem 3D. As mid-1990s shooters go, it's really hard to top Duke Nukem, even on the same engine. Unless you're Doom, on the camera's LCD display. If you really want to know more about Frank Maddin, there's an interview with him on the 3D Realms Legacy website. I'll provide the link in the description if you're really interested. The game engine was developed by Gerald Lindsley, known as the FAST engine. Get out of here, first engine! I can't really find much on Gerald myself. Granted, I didn't look too hard, but what little I did find seems he later released the tools, or at least some information to mod Monster Bash. If you ever had the interest to do so, maybe you can see if you can get it running on a camera screen like Doom. Link in description below for those curious enough. While there are other people involved in the making of this game, I can't be bothered to look into all of them. I'm an orthodox laziest, and it would be completely hypocritical of me to call myself lazy and actually put effort into my videos, unlike others. One thing, however, I did find interesting was the additional maps were credited to Dragon's Eye Productions. I tried to look them up to see if I could give some backstory to them as well, or some kind of information. Now, all I could really find just looking it up was a rather surprise. I have no clue if these are the same people, but the results were interesting to say the least. Formed in 1991, Dragon's Eye Studio was based in Texas and has only been accredited to 2 games on Wikipedia, for Arcadia and Dragonspires. If you don't know what a furry is, then you should consider yourself lucky, or you're my grandmother. I have to believe the Wikipedia is right though, because it puts them in the right time frame as Apogee Software, and in the right place as well, because the original Apogee was also based in Texas. It's just interesting though that the possibility a company having ties to early Apogee Software went on to make a glorified furry chat client. Though Wikipedia says their yearly revenue was under $1 million in 2006, I have to think it must have been rather close, because anything under $1 million can be labeled as under $1 million. It would be kind of stupid to put it any other way. It's like saying you've had sex under 100 times and you're still a virgin. You'd still be correct, but in the most wrong way possible. If that's what you get for appealing to people, I might need to do videos in the future wearing cat ears or something. The game comes in 3 different episodes. I'm personally only going to play the first one for about a level or 2 because I have the attention span of a goldfish, and platforming really isn't my strong point, unless it's in first person for some reason. I seem to be the opposite of everyone else that screams at first person platforming, while I easily give up on side-scrolling platforming. Thanks, Half-Life! When the game starts, you get this interesting little cinematic where our hero, Johnny Dash, just straight up does something that many in The Walking Dead fail to do over and over and over. Actually kill a zombie, with a Little Rascal-style slingshot no less. You know, for a game obviously aimed at children, this is kind of violent. The 90s, weren't they just awesome? Also, you have to love the piracy notice at the beginning of the game shortly after it starts up. Piracy was a big thing back then. It was usually pretty simple to do compared to now, where all of our DRMs are getting in the way of having to wade through hundreds of torrent files that say, cracked video game download, and it's only 30 kilobytes of pure virus. Thankfully, I waited for the sale and ponied up for this game to save myself a trip to the Geek Squad, or to the local gun store to blow my brains out for being such an idiot. Moral of the story is to buy the damn game. I checked out some of the other screens in the menu because I was just curious. It's interesting to see all the old ordering information, BBS information, and stuff like that.
but is completely useless today. If you ever want to send your mind back into the day for a few hours, just read through it all, and you'll have to wipe away all of your tears with free AOL CDs. The story is pretty straightforward. Dash is asleep or some crap like that, and his dog has been missing for 2 days. Some kind of storm or something happens, and while Johnny was tripping balls during a hurricane, he thought he saw some monstrous figures on top of a hill in the distance, and decided it's probably where his dog is. A couple of weeks later, his face is on like every milk carton in the country. I love the picture of Johnny's face when he's talking to the mysterious face. It's really serious, like no 10-year-old should ever make this expression unless he's like the long-lost son of Satan himself. After a while, I got kind of bored of reading the story. It was more or less standard kids' motive to actually do anything other than going to school, watching cartoons, and consuming nothing but sugar and salt-filled snacks all day. I don't know what normal kids did, as I was a loner who started fires in the woods because I was homeschooled and I had to imagine my own friends and then set them on fire. The game itself is pretty well made. It handles nicely despite being on PC. DOS doesn't really have an amazing track record for platforming games, but this game is pretty solid and very playable even with just a keyboard. Mouse is completely useless in this game, so feel free to use it as a laser or as a flashlight or something. Go on, try it. It's super fun and useless. What I do like and hate about this game are the traps. Some of them are funny, with the zombies reaching from the grave, with their feet sticking out through the tiles. Some are alright, add a little of challenge to it, and like the knives, and some are just plain annoying, like the snakes. You can only tell where they are by very slight color differences of the eyes in the background. And even then, you can't kill them or really avoid them if you absolutely have to pass by them. Usually in some games, you can trigger the traps early in some way or kill a hiding enemy when they pop out so you can pass by. If you're colorblind, you might be pretty screwed on this one unless you memorize where each and every one is by memory. And even if you're not, the color difference is subtle enough that you can easily overlook it. The game also has random, for no real reason, point system where you collect and destroy certain things purely for point. However, you do get some benefit from it, like extra lives like most other games, so it's still worth it. You pick up candy for points. Who the hell leaves candy in a graveyard? I guess being dead can't really stop Michael Jackson, his Thriller, for anyone under 13. Enemies are pretty standard, too. Zombies, vultures, hands that crawl around, spooky skeletons. There's more which I have yet to see, like werewolves and a reference to Vincent Price's The Fly, which I thought was kind of neat. The only real annoying thing I came across is when you kill a zombie, his head flies off, which is kind of funny at first. But the head is still more or less alive and rolls around hurting you. Still, at least you get to make him explode into a million pieces. There's some useful things like power-ups for your slingshot, which is indicated by your E-F meter, just beside your health. So far, I've only seen multi-shot, auto-aim shot, which is basically just firing a rocket at them and that turns and follows them, and a large shot that explodes and sends pieces flying everywhere. This is kind of my favorite one. Unlike a lot of other games where you can kind of go ahead without doing all of the tasks, this game you can't, and there is some tough platforming, far-stretched bullshit, and you're going to get frustrated with this more than once playing through. Your goal is to release all of the animals from their cages. Unfortunately, you have to get all of the animals to continue. I kind of gave up on the second level because it had some annoying platforming I wasn't willing to deal with at 4 in the morning. Besides, it goes against my ethics of being lazy to actually try and play the game seriously. I really like the music in this. It's pretty good. I don't know what kind of music card this is supposed to be emulating on, but all I can say is Rob Wallace did a really good job. The audio is pretty good too. The vocals from Johnny are kind of questionable at times. I think they got an actual kid to do it, but I'm not sure whose. Normally I just say it's a woman doing a child's voice, but in a few instances, the voices sound rather slurred in the same manner a kid might do it, so I have to wonder at least this time. Not that I do any better myself. Health comes in the form of a cartoony heart shape. Little disappointed it's not an actual heart, as this game is already so gory for a children's horror themed game. I would half expect it to be. One-ups come in the form of voodoo dolls, strangely enough. Who made these voodoo dolls of a kid that just randomly showed up in a graveyard one night? I know there's witches in this, but is there a sweatshop where they all make voodoo dolls of kids they stole pets from just in case one of them goes middle school Rambo on their asses? Because I'm so lazy, the only time I've actually seen a witch in this is in the intro. But this gives me an idea for a new phrase: flying bitch on a stick. Probably the weirdest trap or map hazard I've seen is the lightning clouds. It's like someone in heaven just started messing with the physics in the world like they didn't know what they were doing. I could just imagine God being all like, "Jesus Christ, what did you do?" And Jesus all like, "I'm sorry, Dad, I was just playing," and God cuts him off and said stuff like, "You know I told you not to touch my planet. You'll throw the whole ecosystem out of balance." And that's what happened to the dinosaurs. I actually wrote a lot more for this than I thought I ever would. I guess I have no reason in particular why I picked this game to play and talk about. Depending on a response, I might pick it up and actually try harder at it in the future and do a follow-up. Otherwise, I feel like I should maybe move on to something else I know a little more about, more how to play better. At the very least, I think it's a nice coincidence that this video will come out around the same time as Halloween, even though I don't give a shit about holidays. But people might want to watch it during then because 'tis the season, I guess. Overall, it is a fun game. Don't take my lazy attitude towards it as any indicator of how good or bad it is. I'm not known for even finishing games that I like. I have a lot of projects on the back burner too because of my low motivation, though I guess at this point it's more like a warehouse of projects, all labeled due later. If you have the money and the time and the interest, I'd highly recommend picking it up, especially if you have nostalgic connections to it perhaps. At the very least, you can always grab the shareware version off the internet legally and run it in DOSBox and play the same thing for yourself. Just as to where to do that, I have no clue, and I'm not setting myself up for some bogus copyright claim crap by telling you where. Unfortunately, you're on your own there, but I'd highly recommend getting a hold of it in any way you can if you really like DOS games or it just means something to you already. If you like this video, you don't have to hit the like and subscribe buttons. You can just go ahead and like it in your head like everyone else before and without the internet. If you want me to even get out of bed long enough to make another video, then you might need to press those buttons, otherwise I'll just induce a coma through sheer laziness.